Good evening to you on this Tuesday edition of the Ballot Briefs business segment. Historic issues including land expropriation as political economic policy have re-emerged as debate continues on the eve of the elections. The emotive issue remains contentious as political parties differ on how this form of restitution ought to be addressed along with its economic implications. All these matters form part of a newly launched book titled Beyond Expropriation Without Compensation. Stellenbosch University Professor Cherryl Walker speaks to us about this as a contributor. Thank you so much for your time, Prof. Walker. I think our starting point really should be the book itself, or this edition seeks to come up with fresh ideas that you and some of your colleagues have deliberated on. Talk us through what is relevant in current day South African economics on this issue.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity, and good evening to your viewers. So the book was launched officially last night at a very lively and interesting discussion. So yes, it is a collaborative project. I want to stress that. There's some 12 chapters, 14 authors, and I have two other co-editors, Olaf Zenker and Zaza Bochenpoel, who brought the project through with me. So it's presenting a range of views on what you rightly say has been a very contentious issue around expropriation without compensation. So part of the book is looking at the constitutional debate, the debates around the Constitution, the question of just and equitable compensation, and where expropriation without compensation fitted in. But then what the book is also wanting to do is to look at a range of land reform issues that some of us feel were actually obscured by all the passions and the focus on this one aspect of land reform. And there are issues there around tenure security, urban land issues is really important. And then more generally, it's trying to think about, now that we've come out of that particular debate, where does land reform fit within a broader program of redistributive justice? And there are some chapters that are trying to think about that as well. So it's not saying that land reform doesn't matter, and we know that in some parts of the country it really does matter. But there are other issues that we need to be thinking about. It's one contribution. What is its contribution? And there's a range of views in the book on that.
Quite fascinating that you mentioned that land reform does matter in South Africa, and that's where much of the debate comes from. The how, though, is what has been lacking. In your assessment, as well as the matters that you have tackled around this issue along with your colleagues, to what extent do politics play a role in that restitution that is sought when it comes to land expropriation?
Well, obviously, politics are very important in terms of the debates, different views on the importance of land and where the focus should be. So politics is part of it. And I think the debate on expropriation without compensation and that process that we went through with Parliament and ultimately the defeat of the lapsing of the constitutional amendment showed the importance of politics. And it was a very polarizing debate. What I think this book is doing now is we've over that particular phase, so many of the passions and issues have not gone away. But where does it fit in now? You mentioned restitution. I mean, the Constitution gives us guidance on that. We have institutions. So I don't know that politics per se is coming in there. And it's really one of the concerns around restitution that we know there's a very large backlog of claims that have not yet been settled. That have to be processed, and the budget is very small. Yeah. So there are also fiscal issues, budgetary issues. And this also comes back to one of the points that we are making, is that there are certain policy choices that have to be made. We have a constrained economy at the moment. And that obviously is the question, how the budget, the pie should be cut, is important. And there are policy and political differences around that. I think I would be arguing that land reform deserves a larger slice of the pie, but we also have to balance that against other interests, other issues and concerns as well. One of the contributions is also looking at the place of, for instance, a basic income grant as part of a broader focus on redistributive justice.
Let's stay on that, Prof, and look at it on the side.
I didn't write that chapter.
Yeah, we've touched on the political dynamic of it and a little bit on the economic side of it. At this point, though, what is then the seventh administration post tomorrow's vote inheriting when it comes to meeting both these sides of the coin?
Well, we have a constitutional commitment to land reform that's in place. And it has various parts. One of the neglected areas that it is certainly inheriting relates to tenure security in the former Bantustans, in the homelands, and the role of traditional authorities. I mean, that's a very contentious issue, and that needs to be resolved in a way that actually recognizes people's rights, which is assured through the Constitution as well. So I think that's a major issue. And then, and some of the political parties do flag this, the question of urban land rights is also really important. So again, it's not to say that agrarian reform, agrarian land rights are not important, and in some parts of the country they clearly are. But I think the question of the right to the city, releasing land that in a way that is fiscally responsible, but also sustainable, and promoting livelihoods and settlement in the urban areas is a major issue that the next government will be facing and has been facing, obviously, as well.
It remains a tough issue to discuss, but thank you so much for your contribution. Prof. Cherryl Walker is with the University of Stellenbosch talking to us about the debate over land expropriation and what the seventh administration will inherit in this regard post tomorrow's vote.